forest behind my grandfather's cabin had always made me uneasy, not because of any specific danger. There were no bears, no cliffs to fall from, no urban legends whispered around campfires. But there was something about it, something in the silence that felt wrong. I had visited the cabin dozens of times since childhood, but I never ventured too deep into the woods. Even when I was younger and more reckless, I felt an unspoken rule settling over me. Don't go too far. It wasn't fear, not exactly. More like an instinct. But today was different. My grandfather had passed away 2 months ago, and I was here to clear out the place before putting it up for sale. It was an excuse, really. I wasn't ready to let go. The cabin was the last piece of him I had left, so maybe that's why I did it. Maybe grief made me careless, or maybe I just needed a distraction. Whatever the reason, I found myself walking into the forest, deeper than I had ever dared before. And that's when I saw it. A small, worn, leather-bound book resting in the hollow of an old tree. A diary. I almost didn't pick it up, but then I saw the date on the last entry. Today. I hesitated before picking up the diary. The leather cover was cracked and discolored, as if it had been left out in the elements for years. But the pages inside? Perfectly dry, untouched by time. I turned to the last entry first, my fingers tightening around the book as I read the date again. Today. That was impossible. There was no one else here. The nearest town was miles away, and I had driven up alone. The cabin had been locked tight when I arrived. Even if someone had come through these woods, what were the chances they'd leave behind a diary with an entry written on the exact day I found it? I swallowed hard and flipped back to the first few pages. The handwriting was neat at first, the ink dark and precise, but as I skimmed through, the penmanship grew frantic, the words slanting wildly across the pages. I turned back to the last entry, my pulse quickening as I read. If someone finds this, please, you have to listen. I don't have much time. It knows I've written about it. It knows I'm still here. If you've picked up this diary, you're already in danger. A branch snapped somewhere behind me. I froze. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the diary. My breath caught in my throat, ears straining against the silence. The air was still, the trees unmoving, but something had snapped that branch. I scanned the undergrowth, my pulse hammering in my ears. The logical part of my brain told me it was just an animal, a deer, maybe, or a fox. But another part, the one gripping the diary a little too tightly, wasn't so sure. I forced myself to take a slow breath and turn my attention back to the book. The pages felt rough under my fingertips, the ink slightly smudged in places as if the writer's hand had been shaking. My eyes darted back to the last lines. If someone finds this, please, you have to listen. I don't have much time. It knows I've written about it. It knows I'm still here. If you've picked up this diary, you're already in danger. I swallowed. I didn't believe in ghosts, demons, or forest spirits, but this was unsettling in a way I couldn't explain. I flipped back a few pages, searching for something, anything, that would give me context. The earlier entries were mundane at first. September 14th. The air is getting colder. I think autumn will come early this year. The woods are quieter than usual. I feel like I'm being watched. But I always feel that way out here. Maybe I just need more sleep. September 19th. Found an old hunting blind near the river today. It looks abandoned, but I could swear I saw movement inside. Didn't get close enough to check. Maybe I should. September 22nd. I'm not alone in these woods. I hear footsteps at night. Too heavy to be an animal. Too slow. They stop when I turn on my flashlight. but I know something is out there. I can feel it. My skin prickled. These weren't just casual journal entries. They felt like warnings. The dates, the growing paranoia in the writing, it painted a picture I didn't like. Whoever wrote this had been out here for weeks, watching, listening. And then, I turned to the final pages. The handwriting became jagged, the words nearly illegible in some places. October 3rd. I saw it. It's not human. It doesn't move right. It doesn't belong here. And now it knows I see it. It knows I understand. October 4th. I can hear it outside my cabin. It whispers when I try to sleep. It's waiting for me to come out. October 5th. If someone finds this, please, you have to listen. The same words from the last entry. I flipped the page, but there was nothing else. That was where it ended. A cold breeze swept through the trees, rustling the leaves overhead. I looked up, my unease growing. The forest felt different now, heavier, like it was watching me. And then, another snap, this time closer. I wasn't alone. I clenched the diary in my hands, my breath slow and deliberate as I turned my head toward the sound. The trees stood tall and unshaken, their skeletal branches reaching into the overcast sky. The underbrush rustled, but there was no wind. Something was moving. I told myself to be rational. The writer of the diary was probably paranoid, isolated in the woods for too long, hearing things in the dark, letting their mind play tricks on them. That didn't mean I had to do the same. And yet, I checked my phone. No signal. Typical. My fingers tightened around the diary as I weighed my options. Go back to the cabin, lock the doors, and pretend I never found this? Or stay here and let my curiosity get the better of me? I had already made my choice the moment I picked up the book. Steeling myself, I turned in the direction of the noise and took a cautious step forward. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. Nothing. I took another step. The trees stood densely packed, their trunks gnarled and weathered with age. The deeper I went, the darker it became, the branches above filtering the weak sunlight into scattered fragments. Then I saw them. Footprints. They weren't mine. The forest floor was damp from recent rain, the soil soft enough to leave clear impressions. And these prints, deep, heavy, deliberate, led further into the woods. I swallowed hard, crouching to get a better look. The shape was odd. At first glance, they seemed human, long, with a defined arch and toes. But the more I looked, the more I realized something was wrong. The proportions were off. The arch was too high, the toes too long, the spacing unnatural, as if whoever left them didn't walk the way a person should. A chill ran down my spine. The footprints weren't old. In fact, they looked fresh as if they had been made today. A sick realization settled in my gut. If these were fresh, and I hadn't seen anyone else here, who or what had made them? I turned to leave. That's when I heard the breathing. Shallow, ragged, right behind me. I didn't turn around. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I knew in a way I couldn't explain, that if I moved too fast, if I made a sound, whatever was behind me would react. The breathing was slow, deliberate, like it was waiting, testing. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening around the diary. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out everything but that horrible, uneven inhaling. The kind of sound a person makes when their lungs aren't working quite right. Carefully, I shifted my eyes to the side, trying to catch a glimpse without making it obvious. Something was there. A shape, taller than me, standing completely still among the trees. I couldn't make out details, just the vague outline, too thin, limbs too long, head tilted at an unnatural angle. My gut twisted. It was watching me. I forced myself to breathe evenly. Then, with slow, measured movements, I closed the diary and slipped it into my jacket. The breathing hitched, a warning. It knew. The diary. That was why it was here. I took a step forward. The breathing remained steady. Another step. Still nothing. It was letting me go. No, it was waiting for me to run. I walked, keeping my pace steady, fighting every urge to break into a sprint. I could feel it behind me, feel its gaze pressing against my back. The urge to look was unbearable, but I didn't. I couldn't. The trees began to thin. I could see the clearing ahead, the faint outline of my grandfather's cabin. Almost there. Then, just as I reached the edge of the trees, a whisper right against my ear. Put it back. A shudder ran through me. The voice was wrong, distorted, like it had been dragged across gravel before reaching my ears. I didn't stop. I stepped into the clearing, my breath hitching as the light hit my skin. The feeling of being watched snapped, like a string pulled too tight and suddenly released. I turned. The forest stood still, empty. Nothing there, nothing at all. But I knew better. I had made a mistake. I should have never taken the diary. I didn't stop moving until I reached the cabin. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the key, shoving the door open and slamming it shut behind me. The silence inside was suffocating. I leaned against the door, trying to steady my breathing. The diary felt heavier now, its presence unnatural in my pocket. My mind raced. Put it back. The words lingered in my head, the voice, if it even was a voice, still scraping against my nerves. I should have listened, but I didn't. I pulled the diary out and dropped it onto the kitchen table, staring at it like it might move on its own. The leather cover seemed darker now, almost damp. Had it always looked like that? I needed to think, to process. But before I could, something shifted outside. Not footsteps, not breathing. A shadow gliding across the window. I froze. It wasn't walking. It wasn't even moving. It was drifting. I grabbed the curtains and yanked them shut, heart pounding. My fingers gripped the fabric so tightly my knuckles ached. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. And yet, the diary sat on the table, proof that something was deeply, terribly wrong. I had to know more. Against every survival instinct screaming at me to burn the damn thing and leave, I flipped it open. The last entry was still there. The frantic handwriting burned into my mind. But there was something else now. Something that hadn't been there before. A new line. Fresh ink. You shouldn't have taken it. The breath caught in my throat. My hands went ice cold as I stared at the words, my pulse hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. Number no. No. This had to be a trick, a mistake, my eyes playing games with me. Another line appeared. You can still return it. The pen wasn't moving. The ink wasn't spreading. But the words were appearing, letter by letter. I shoved the diary away, my chair scraping loudly against the floor as I stumbled back. A soft thump echoed from outside. Something had pressed against the wall of the cabin. I wasn't alone. And now, it was closer. The air inside the cabin felt heavy, thick, like the pressure before a storm. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stood frozen, my eyes locked on the diary. Another thump, closer this time. Something was pressing against the walls, testing them. I reached for my phone out of instinct. No signal, no Wi-Fi. I was completely alone. Number not alone. I turned toward the door, my breath shallow. The lock. I had locked it, right? My fingers trembled as I reached for the handle, giving it a gentle tug, locked. A small relief, but not enough. Then, a whisper, not from outside, from behind me. "You can still return it." I spun around so fast my vision blurred. The cabin was empty, but the diary, it was open again. New words sprawled across the page. But not for long. A shadow passed over the window. A shape, tall, thin, too still to be human. The cabin door creaked. I backed away, hands shaking. "Put it back." The voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was everywhere, crawling under my skin, inside my skull. The walls groaned as if they were breathing. The lights flickered. And then, a single deafening knock. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The door, it was waiting. I clutched the diary to my chest, heart pounding. The words shifted on the page, rearranging themselves before my eyes. The longer you wait, the harder it will be. I didn't need to be told twice. With shaking hands, I grabbed my jacket and bolted for the back door. My fingers fumbled with the latch, my breath coming in short gasps. Another knock, harder this time. I didn't stop to see what would happen next. I ran, out into the cold night, back toward the trees, back toward where I found it. I had to return the diary before it was too late. The forest felt different now, darker, like the trees had moved closer together, trapping me inside. The path I had taken earlier was gone, swallowed by the undergrowth. My breath came in short gasps as I ran, branches clawing at my arms, my legs, my face. The diary burned in my grip, ice cold yet searing against my skin. "Put it back." The words echoed in my skull, no longer a whisper, no longer a command, a demand. Something was following me. I could hear it, not footsteps, not breathing. Something else, a sound I couldn't describe, like flesh peeling from bone, like teeth grinding against stone. I didn't dare look back. The tree. I needed to find the tree. I stumbled into the clearing where I had first found the diary. The hollowed-out trunk stood waiting, gaping like an open mouth. I fell to my knees, my hands shaking as I shoved the diary back inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the forest exhaled. The air around me shifted, the pressure lifting like a weight had been pulled from my chest. The unnatural stillness faded, the wind returning, rustling the leaves, whispering through the branches. And just like that, the presence was gone. I swallowed hard, my body trembling as I pushed myself to my feet. It was over, or at least I wanted to believe that. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A single page lay on the ground, torn from the diary. My blood ran cold as I read the words written across it. "It let you go this time. Next time it won't." I didn't take the page with me. I didn't look back. I just walked away, praying there would never be a next time. If you have a story to share, feel free to leave a comment. I might feature it in a future video. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next ones. More terrifying tales are coming soon.